Actually, I think that's a good, like, conversation starter. Like, I want to know more about what you usually talk about on your podcast.
Yeah, I mean, it's very so my podcast is about magic, tarot, living, laughing, loving, like being a critical, magical, intuitive person in the end times.
Mm-hmm.
And so I usually have guests on who are really interesting to me for whatever reason, or they're my friends and I really admire their work. So I'll have like herbalists on, I'll have business owners who are witches on, I'll have intuitives on, astrologers on, creatives, artists. I had yesterday, I spoke to a sexuality doula and we talked about
Ooh.
that. Yeah, writers, poets. If you want to talk to them, I'll give you their info. They're incredible. So yeah, I just like to have conversations that me and my friends have, but I think a lot of people actually don't have, because a lot of times people be like, they'll hear a conversation I'm having with my husband or a friend and they're like, can you just make a podcast of this? Because we're not really talking about intuition or money or business or patriarchy or capitalism or like how to live. And so that's partially why I have a podcast. How about you?
I completely agree with you. Like, I started this podcast because I believe in the power of, like, super deep conversations, which I don't think is happening often enough for some reason.
Yeah.
And I think it's kind of like this societal thing where it's like, oh, deep conversations. It's like, oh, it's like so boring and it's not very fun. We need to talk about what we're wearing for Halloween, or like, all the, like, all, fun small talks are fun, of course, but I think there's a lot to be learned from having these conversations about, like, deep life philosophies and what we believe in, and really have a time to
Mhm.
overthink. And that's really why I created this podcast. I like to poke into people's brains, and I think it's fascinating to just hear about other people's worldview, because we all have different
Same.
worldviews.
Yep.
And I always like to kind of put it this way when we're, like, interacting with another person, that, like, we have our own little planets. And when we have these little conversations with other people, it's kind of like two planets are crashing into each other. And sometimes these crashes are not as pleasant, but sometimes it can create some magic. And I think it just creates this chemistry that is, it's just, it just creates this whole new experience for us and broaden our perspective of life. And, like, we're having our little clash of our own planets.
Yes. Well, for my podcast, I was just talking about this where, witches believe, and I'm sure many other people, mystics believe that when one plus one does not equal two, it equals three. Because you have me, my energy, my experiences, my beliefs, as you said, your beliefs, your energy, where you are in the present
Mm.
moment. And then you have the third, which is the energy of our exchange. And so if two people have come with presents, I mean, I don't mean presents, gifts, but like they've shown up and they're engaged and they're alive, that exchange, that energy exchange creates a third. It creates a third kind of energy, just like how I could never write a song. The song I would write alone is very different than the song I would write jamming with my best friend. Like I couldn't create it. They couldn't create it. It's its own living kind of encapsulation of an energy exchange. And that's actually how I view all exchanges, like witches believe, or I believe we're always in relationship. So we need to think about the quality of our relationship. We need to think of the intention of our relationship. We have to regard all of our exchanges, which are relationships, with a lot of reverence and a lot of respect.
Yeah, and I think I agree with you in that, like, we need to be aware of these things. And sometimes I think, as people who are just going through life living in this whole, like, mess of a society it is now, we kind of tend to forget about it, and we let ourselves as a people pleaser myself, I say yes to all interactions. And I've recently kind of like been I've been realizing that I need to be more mindful. This is my life and this is my time and this is my mind, and the interactions that I choose needs to be thought more carefully, because sometimes it can like a bad interaction can really affect you, in a lot of ways. And as a people pleaser, I find that if I just let myself unconditionally saying yes to all sorts of opportunities, all sorts of engagements, then it can sometimes kind of take a toll on my mentality. Could you relate to
Yeah.
that?
Yes and no. I'm not a people pleaser.
Good
I
for
say
you.
no. I say no to requests multiple times a week. I also ignore requests multiple times a week. If I know myself, I know my energy. I'm an introvert. I'm not someone, I know some people who get charged by being around other people, and I love that for them, but that's not me. I also think that when we say no to requests or when we renegotiate, right? So, like, maybe you're just saying, hey, I can't get you this thing by tomorrow, or hey, I can't do this concert on Tuesday, but hit me up 2 months from now. Would love
Mm,
to, which is real. Like, I will say that if I really am into the person or the request, but I just don't have the bandwidth and I don't have the capacity, I see that also as like a beautiful model, because no one is going to steward our energy and our time like we will. And we do live in this very extractive culture. And then when you pair that with societal expectations of feminine people, of femmes, of women, of minorities, of people of color, of queer people. I mean, we could be here all day. There's this expectation that like we have to be available at all times, and that being available, it makes us good, which then makes us protected, which makes us safe. When in reality, actually, it leaves us depleted. It leaves us perhaps resentful. It might leave us more open to attack or, more open to extraction. So I actually feel like we're seeing more and more people understand the power of no, that no is a door
yeah.
opener. It's not a rejection, I also just kind of, I mean, again, I'm very energetically sensitive. I know you are too. Like, you're very sensitive. And so I think like slowing down and also thinking about the energy of the ask. Like, is this an
Hmm.
exchange I want? Like what's the energy of the invitation? How is this being
Yes.
phrased? Like, do I want it even do I need a minute to be like, do I even really want to do this, or is it my people pleasing jumping out? Do I really just want to get to know the person and they seem cool? Maybe I'm like, hey, I can't do your thing, but like, do you want to get coffee next week? Like, I think when we can kind of take time to parse out how we, again, relationship, how we want to engage, I think that takes back our power, our autonomy, our energy, and we can navigate life with a sense of confidence and a sense of flow and direction, instead of feeling like we're one of those noodles. Like, do you have those
Hmm.
noodles that like are on the side of the road? They're like getting blown
Oh,
up,
like,
and they're like, "Ugh." Yeah, exactly,
yeah, yeah,
right,
yeah.
yeah,
I
that's what
know what
it's
you
like.
mean.
And so, I mean, I have clients, and sometimes I'll say to them like, "Hey, you got to make me a promise." For the next, if they're people pleasers, right? I'll say,
Hmm.
you need to make me a promise for the next 30 days. Any requests that aren't going to pay you, any requests that are outside of your job, like if they have jobs that they work at, and you're not going to get fired for saying no, like we have to be
Hmm.
real about this too. That's the other thing. Like, any outside requests that come to you in the next 30 days, I'm going to challenge you to say no, or hey, check back with me in 2 months. Hey, actually, I can do this, in January or whatever.
Hmm.
I once asked someone to be on my podcast last month, and their assistant said they are not taking any external requests until 2023.
Oh,
And I was
wow.
I know. And I was like, that is so amazing. I was like, had a minute of envy. Like, I was like, what if we were just like, until 2027, like, check back with
I'm
me then.
kind of
Yeah.
a little bit occupied right now.
So you're not asking for my advice, but I would challenge you to spend the next month or so, at the very least, slowing down before you get a request, checking in, having a conversation with yourself. And is like, is it a yes? Why is it a yes? Is it a no? Why is it a no? And is it a like, hey, I want to do this, but I'm tired and it'll take away time from this other project, or like my just mental health? Maybe I'll tell them, hey, can we do this in February or whatever?
Right.
Can I tell you another magic trick?
Please do.
There's this other magic trick that I do where I will consciously not overschedule myself, not say yes to things, and I'll actually schedule out blank space in my schedule. And a lot of times, what will happen often is, closer to that blank space, closer to those 3 days I have off, or I've like, not overscheduled myself in, a really rad opportunity will come. And I'm like, oh, I can do this because I've like pre-scheduled this time for something cool to happen. Maybe it's just me hanging out with my dogs. Maybe it's me making a cheesecake. Or maybe it's like this person being like, hey, do you want to do this project? Like, so think about that. Like, think about infusing your time with like time magic and intention in that way.
I think that's a valuable advice that not a lot of us should be aware of. Like we are not aware of. That's what I meant to say. I think like the whole like me time. We need to really be mindful about how we spend our time. Is something that's for some reason very overlooked nowadays, and including myself. Like I'm so bad at time management, and I'm like such a workaholic that I find myself, even though I started this like whole music making thing as something that sprouted out of passion, it somehow along the way became something that became work,
Yeah.
like, and I'm like,
No,
I find myself allocating these like the majority of my day into something that I know needs to sprout some passion in me, but it doesn't anymore because I'm not
yes.
allocating myself enough free time to uh, to let myself, get some steam out and allow some magic to happen in between, some spontaneous
Yeah.
act of love or fun or some sort of freedom outside of quote unquote work. And it's something that I'm trying to do more and more, just allocating more time for myself, time for something outside of what I do 24/7. I think that's so important.
And I think what you're saying is really important for people to hear because, like, similar to you, I am right in the same boat as you. Like, I created a business out of
Mm,
things I loved, out of creativity, basically. And
right.
then when, like, capitalism enters the chat, you're like, it really changes the relationship. You're like, wait, I only have half a day. I have to make this thing. Or
Mm,
um, for me, like, I just started putting a lot of pressure on myself. And when
yeah.
you like infuse money with it, when it really, can I swear?
Oh yeah. Oh, just you can like go all
It
out.
it just fucks with your head. And you when you're
Yeah.
like, it's just a very different animal than when it's like you in your room and you're collaging or you're writing or it just changes things in this way where like creativity and magic and poetry and art and being free takes up time. It takes the time it takes. But like capitalism and everyone who maybe are not in touch with their creativity or their innate divinity, like it's just like it marches on. And especially with like, I've been thinking about this a lot. I think you're a lot younger than me. So I can remember, right? Like there's
Mm,
before times. I remember because I've worked before I ran my own business, I worked in design. I
mm,
remember the timelines now are so crunchy. like where it used to take, a couple of weeks for one round of something, like people want it to happen in 3 days. Or similarly, even with content, like having to post on social media 5 times a week, or having to create things for that, or like even just the idea, like I love my weekly podcast and I'm sure you love yours, but just the idea that we have to do like one episode a week is actually like a lot.
Oh yeah, like with the editing and, just trying to figure out uploading actually takes a long time. It actually takes a long.
Yes.
People think that you just put it up and click upload. It's not that. There's a lot
No.
that goes behind that.
So I've noticed I'm like really trying to consider my time and really trying to take back my energy. I don't want to get hijacked by the shoulds of the scary Zuckerbergs and what other people are doing. I want to sort of begin to create my own timelines because I'm happier when I do that. I feel more supported. I feel safer. I've kind of caught myself. So like that's what I'm working through now. How do you relate to that those ideas?
I think I'm definitely a work in progress in that realm because technically I'm a freelancer too, like as in the sense that I am in charge of managing my own schedules. Um, but I, for some reason, seem to have this thing where there's no like middle ground. So I'm either overworking myself because I have those good days, quote unquote, good days when I can seem to work without eating, without taking a nap, without proper socializing, without talking to anybody for the whole day. And I'm like, hell yeah, I'm on a roll right now. So I'm working from 7 in the morning till 11 at night without eating and doing anything else outside of work. That's one side of the extreme, and the other, I'm just completely out and I don't feel like doing anything, and
Yeah.
which was yesterday, and I just spent the whole day watching anime. And I rarely have days when I have the right percentage quota, if like the right balance of work and life. And I do have those rare days. And when that happens, it's really it feels nice. It feels nice.
And also to challenge you, like maybe you are the kind of worker who needs to go in really hardcore for like 3 or 4 days, get in the rhythm, get in the flow, like, have the momentum going. And then maybe you need 3 days totally off. Like maybe your schedule is like 4 days hard and then like 3 days to just chill, watch anime, cook some food, hang out with friends. I mean, that's the other thing. I'm like, we have these weird ideas of what balance should be and who created the nine to
You
five.
just
Who
fucked
create?
with my mind. You just brain fucked me because that actually just hits home for me. I'm like, who told me what the right balance is? Who told me, you know, I need to work 9 hours a day and then take a break for the rest of the day? It's like, oh my God. And I'm
I
like,
mean,
I'm not even sure.
get to know
Yeah.
your like that's what my work is. That's what I talk to people about with like their own rhythms, their own cycles. Like again, like whoever created the 5 day work week
Uh huh.
is not us. It was some terrible capitalist overlord that was succumbing to union people because before unions and the labor movement started in America, people were working 7 days a week. So they were like fighting and they were striking, and then finally they reached an agreement where they're like 8 hours to work, 8 hours to sleep, 8 hours to like rest, whatever, right? That's where this comes from. But who's to say that like you're not a much happier, like more productive person on your own rhythms? Maybe you can figure out a schedule where you work 4 days really hardcore at like 12 hours a day, and then you have 3 days off or 2.5 days off, and you whatever you do is sort of light work or something. So, or like returning emails or something. I
Mm-hmm.
just think it's like you are a freelancer, which means like you can figure it out. I know when I began my working for myself, I brought like my boss, because I had jobs beforehand. I brought like my bosses into the job even though they weren't there. Like I was like, I need to by if I'm not at the computer by 9 a.m., like I'm a failure. Like, like I had these weird ideas that were brought to me from these like terrible working conditions I came from. And over the years, I've been trying to unravel like, maybe I just want to work 4 days a week. That seems great. That's what I'm trying to do 4 days a week. I'm like, I work 4 days a week and then I can just chill. That feels really good. Maybe one day I'll get to 3 days a week if I get really smart about my time management. But I also want to figure out how to not work like 3 months out of the year.
Oh, like completely.
Like maybe give myself mid-December to January just off and
Right.
I'm just like, whatever. And then maybe like I want July and August off.
So,
How do I figure that out? Or at least
yeah.
like how can I take 1 month off? Or I'm just trying to figure that out because I'm realizing how much of my rules are fake. They're made up. Money is fake. Schedules are fake. Like what we're supposed to be
Yes.
doing with our time is fake. People pleasing is fake. There are all these things made up that myself included. I'm not saying I have reached some, mountaintop of like transcending any of it. But the more I realize like that we already know like that we are all living in our own reality. We know that, right? Like you said, we're in our own little bubbles, we're little planets, we're little ecosystems. So why not create the one you want?
Did that process of finding your own kind of pace, which I'm assuming is still, under progress, but, you know, throughout this journey, did that include any sort of a feeling of guilt? Because it definitely did for me. I found myself when I'm, waking up at 11, which feels fantastic for me. I love waking up at 10 and getting ready by 11ish. But, when we spent our whole lifetime going to schools and be expected to show up to school at 9 in the morning, 8 in the morning, and that became the right thing. When you're late for school, then you're punished. So I think it still does, induce a lot of guilt in me when I wake up. When I wake up at 11, my body feels great, but my mind doesn't. Do you experience that too?
Yeah. Yes. Yes, I do. I'm still like working through it. My studio, our hours are 10 to 6 because that feels really good, Like I'm like that feels good to me. I have like a couple hours in the morning and then when I get out, it's not insanity. Like it's not 8 at night. I mean, like if that feels good. And I just decided it. But yes, I feel guilty. I'm working out my shoulds, like as always with everything. It's hard. It's very entrenched. It's very intertwined. But it's for me sometimes, guilt is a symptom that the thing is not part of me. Like I did not create it. Guilt to me often feels like it's been put upon. Like, oh, you should call your, I don't know, grandparents or you. I mean, I'm not, I do. I love them. They're wonderful. But I mean, I'm just trying to think of like certain things like, oh, you should. So like, this is what I did. This started about 10 years ago. I can't believe I actually can't believe I'm telling this and where strangers were listening, but I just stopped going to like parties or gatherings where like when I was real with myself and I was like, I don't really like these people. Like, I don't want to spend 4 hours making small talk. I don't like small talk. Like, I am bored. We don't have anything in common. Like, they're nice
And we'll never
people.
see each other again, probably.
I wish them well. Like they are nice people and I'm not going to go. So about 10 years ago, I just stopped going to things out of obligation or because I thought I should. And my
Oh, yeah.
partner would like, so like he'd be like, I'm going to this party. And I'd be like, have fun. Like I'm not. And in the beginning, I felt guilty. And what I realized it was about was this appearance, which is fake, like this appearance of wanting to I don't know what, get an invitation. So there's scarcity in there too, right? Because if I say no, maybe I won't get another invite. Maybe they're going to see me as a bitch. Maybe this and that, maybe that. And when I started sweeping those out, like those cobwebs out, it just made it more freely. So that also paved the way for me in work to say, hey, I don't want to do this, or yes, I don't want to do this. Like, it seemed interesting to talk to you. So I'm like, yes, but other people, I'm like, no, no. And I think that I needed, so like I teach a trauma informed way of unraveling. And what that means is having consent with yourself, taking baby steps. I say like taking a trauma informed approach is, instead of like cannonballing into the ocean, you just like wade in, and then finally you can kind of start swimming. So like for me, the trauma informed approach was to start in situations that didn't involve money or professional reputation, which was like, friends of friends or acquaintances. And then I kind of would kind of go from there. So another thing for me was like, this was a big thing, and it's very small and low stakes. And I'm just sharing this in case folks can resonate. If I was out somewhere, my partner my partner is very social. My partner is the person who's leaving the party at the end.
Right.
I would just have this thing happen to me where I'd be like, I'm ready to go. And I didn't want to stay. I didn't want to wait. I just wanted to go. And so I would practice just going when I wanted to go. I feel like we'll stay out of obligation, or we'll wait for that first person to go. And then we're like, we can go. But so we would take separate cars. And I'd be like, okay, it's 9:00. This was fun. I've been here for 2 hours. That feels great. Bye. So I think we can like start. You don't have to like, there's this stupid idea in the world that like, you do this one thing and everything changes, and it has to be radical and it has to be huge and da-da-da. You can do all these baby steps in your life, and you can take a trauma-informed approach and just be like, okay, what feels like sort of painful, but I want to do it based upon people-pleasing things, and just start from there. And then there's no way I could be saying no to professional things now if I hadn't tested it with lower stakes situations. And nothing happened. I didn't blow up. Yeah, sure, maybe those people think I'm a fucking bitch, but like, I can't control that. They might have thought I was a bitch if I went. Like, I don't know. You know what I mean?
And it's like so much of it is like, I realize it is out from an external source. And we're like, when we feel that guilt when I wake up at 11 in the morning, when you go to a party, when you miss out on, quote unquote, miss out on the party, it's always like, what if that person thinks of me as a loser? What if that person thinks of me as a freaking, I don't know, room hermit or whatever? It's always the opinions of others. And it's so crazy if you think about it just a little bit. Those people that you worry so much about, the opinions of, have their own insecurities too. We all know, like, if we just think about it for a second, they're human beings too. They probably have their own insecurities as much as we do, but we still don't think about that part of the whole humanity thing, and we just think about how crazy other people will think about us, and that creates the guilt, I think. And it's just like, just having this conversation with you right now is such a good reminder that, I can have limits, and I can be in charge of my own life. I can say no to things. I can say yes to things, and I can create my own boundaries, and it's okay. And that's the right thing to do.
I also think like part of boundary work is really respecting other people's boundaries. So for example, let's say in 2 weeks, I ask you to do something. I might want to have you on my podcast. Not in 2 weeks, but not in 2 weeks, but probably 2022, right? That's kind of what I'm looking at. But anyway,
or 2027. I don't. Or
2027.
I don't mind waiting.
Or next lifetime. I'm sure we'll meet again. But like, let's just say I'm like, hey, babe, and you said no, I can't. Part of really beautiful boundary work is, instead of me getting in my head, oh, they don't like me, oh, I'm not important, like wherever our brain goes, and then we're spiraling. And in literally 10 seconds, we've gone from someone saying, hey, I don't have the capacity to do that, to I'm a bad person, no one loves me, like we just jump. How about taking a minute and being like, wow, good for you. Good for honoring your boundaries. You know, this is great. If you have time in 2022 or 2027 or next life, hit me up. I'd love to talk to you. Like, part of good boundary work is honoring it when people say, hey, like, I can't, you know, or part of good boundary work is honoring the sacredness of other people's energy in life and checking in. Hey, can you do this? Like, is this okay? Or do you need to push that back? Like, how are you feeling? You know, and not in a flaky way, not like letting people flake, but just sort of in a more conscious way. Like, I feel like we've also been treated by white supremacy and by capitalism to treat everything urgently. But as long as you're not like in an ambulance going to the you know, it's not urgent.
No, it's not. And it's the big part about that is just being honest. And I think it's kind of, it's crazy how just a simple change of words, just, just opening up just that little part of myself being like, hey, I can't, rather than just like straight up, I can't, no, I don't want to. Just add one more sentence. I'm just a little occupied right now. My life is a little hectic and there's a lot going on. Just that one extra sentence can change the whole vibe of the whole conversation and the relationship. And it's
Yeah.
crazy how much that one sentence is missed out on, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. And it's like the like this weird introduction of the binary into our brains. I mean, it's part of our evolution, you know, from a biological standpoint to have good and bad. There's many reasons for it that I will not get into, but also the binary is terrible. So it's like, it's not like you're good and I'm bad. It's not that you're the villain for saying no, but our brains will go there really quickly, you know? And so
Yeah.
when did like a rejection or when did someone saying, hey, like I'm at capacity for the next 8 weeks, like can we check back later or what, or us saying, hey, actually I'd love to do that, but my rate is $1,000 more than what you're offering. So unless you can meet me there, that's the other thing. Like, can we just have a moment? Because I know there's freelancers listening. Start normalizing businesses asking us to do things and then telling us their budget.
Yes.
How many times
It's
have I gotten someone being like, we really want you to do this thing. We really want you to do this thing. And so much of my decision making is around time and money. And I'm like, okay, well, what's your budget? And then they're like, well, I don't know. What do you think? And I'm like, no, no, tell me what you can pay me. Has that ever happened to you?
it's for me, it has always been like, can you do this thing for me? Like, can you do this online, virtual? Like, can you do this concert? Can you shoot a video for me? Can you shoot this? It's kind of like, I find it a little bit disrespectful in the sense that, um, well, yeah, I mean, it's, for me, I never really like got back to it saying like, what's your budget? Um, I'm keen to learn more, but it's
So what I hear
I'd
you
rather
saying
have
is,
them I'd rather have them come with me with a proposal of what the specifics rather than just like, can you do this for me? We're looking for you to like do this virtual concert, this video concert, this, I don't know, shout out, whatever. Give me the specifics. Like when, how
yes,
long, how much
clarity,
money, how
clarity,
much
yes.
budget are you thinking? Give me the details because I can't just look at what you want me to do and say yes because I have things in my life with my time that I want to do, you know? I got things to
So
do.
so what I hear you saying is you get asked to do things for free a lot?
I think I do. I think, and most of the time I think they're just coming from they mean well. And there are
Yes.
times it's not a big effort thing sometimes, you know. So I
Sure.
recently got asked to like, send a little video message to their English teacher who introduced my music to his class. And it's like it's just
Cute.
a
Yeah,
wholesome
it's
thing. And I
cute.
would just
Yeah.
say, "Hi, thank you,
Hi,
Mr. T.
yeah.
Thank you." But sometimes it could be like, "Hey, can you like sometimes like ambiguity just like really confuse me rather than
Yeah.
like having people approach me to do things for free. That's
Yes.
not it. It's more like just the ambiguity is a little like it just kind of ticks me off where
And
people are
then
like
when
just
you
sending me their music and be like, can you listen to this? Okay. Okay.
then
They just
what?
send me
Like
random.
I'll put it
Yeah.
yeah, you're like, I'm
Yeah.
all right, I'll do the dishes and listen to your song. Cool. Bye.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
yeah, I just was curious about that because I was like, oh, I guess it just happened. Meaning like the asks, it's just very like I often think like because I'm someone who's incredibly mindful of other people's time almost to a fault. Like
Mm,
I'm like so much so I maybe wouldn't ask someone for a favor. Like I'm like,
yeah.
oh, they're too I'm just assuming everyone is so busy and they're in their own life and they have their own things they have to deal with. I would never kind of want to impose upon them. But I often am like, what would it be like to be the kind of person who
Hmm.
doesn't has no thought and they're just like, hey, will you do this thing for me? Hey, will you do this thing for free for me? Like, hey, like I'm just like, wow, what's going on there? Like I'm literally curious. Like what kind of like where is there a thought process? Is there no like, oh hey, will you do this thing for free for me right now? Like, hey, oh, like I don't know you. We've never met.
Yeah.
I don't know anything about you. Like, it's just, all I'm saying is we just live in a really weird world where, to me, it's backwards pants day. Where, like, for me, I think about quality of relationship. I definitely do not like to have transactional relationships, like,
Yeah.
in my life. Like, I do not like to feel like I'm being used. I do not like to feel like someone just wants something from me for themselves, and that's the we're going back to quality of energy. If the quality of the exchange is I'm like, "Oh, Sue, I love your mic cover." I can just have it, right? Like you'll just send it to me, right? Like that's the quality of exchange when I think about if someone's like, "Hey Sarah, will you do this thing for me?" Like, oh wait, I'm
Yeah.
like, "Wait, who are you?" Like and I don't mean to sound rude or bitchy, but I'm like, "No, really like what's going on here?" Like I don't know you. I'm not familiar with your work. Um like it's very interesting to me. Like
I
it's just fascinating.
I think there's a difference in the nuance though connected to the quality of the relationship like you just mentioned and the way the ask is phrased and the intention of the person. I think there's it's one thing to ask a complete stranger or someone you think is gullible to doing whatever you ask them to do something for them and another to just genuinely need help from someone who
Yes.
can give you some help.
Of
And
course. Of
yeah,
course. Of
and I
course.
think the latter is sometimes it can actually just I think people I'd like to think that humanity, just humans in general, want to help people. It's
I
just
agree.
that when you just come up to somebody and like, hey, listen to my track. Hey, yo, just give me a shout out. It's just rude. It's just common sense not to, don't be like that. Just, be genuine. I think genuinity really goes a
Yes.
long way.
Yes. Thank you for clarifying that because I did realize I sounded very ungrateful, I suppose. Um or
No,
um
no.
or like judgmental of humanity. I just find it fascinating. I'm similar to you. I'm happy to help when I can,
Mm,
when I have the capacity, when I have the bandwidth, when I feel called. I just similar to you. I'm. It's just to me it's capitalism. Like to me it's just like
yeah.
this is the influence of a transaction. What's your exchange with me? Like, are we going to be friends? Do you want to be my friend? Like, do you think I'm
Yeah.
cool? Or is it like you just want me to like link your track on shout out on my social media? But we've never met. I don't know if you're a sexual offender. I don't know if you call your mother on Fridays. I don't know if you bring gifts to like your friends' new houses. Like, I don't really know anything about you other than you made a piece of music that you want me to listen to. You want me to spend 5 minutes of my time, and then you want me to post it on the internet. But I don't know if we would like each other. I don't know if, I like, that's what I find fascinating about it, where I'm like, I need to feel like this person is interesting. They're cool. I'm interested in them. Maybe we'll be friends. Like maybe they're in my community. Like maybe we'll end up doing something together one day because we have mutual friends. I'm an admirer of them or whatever it is. I'm like, and also I want to vet people. I want to, if I am shouting someone out, that is me shouting them out. That is me being like, I endorse this person. This person is great. And what if that person was an abusive to their girlfriends? You know how horrible I would feel? I would be like, oh my God, I can't believe and then my friend, then the people who clicked the thing and got into the person, that maybe they like them and maybe I just have so much. Yeah, I just think about these things, honestly. I know it sounds like, I know this podcast is the overthinking podcast. So luckily here we are in the overthinking
You're in the right spot. Yeah.
Here we are, my friend. But these are the things I think about where I'm like, well, but what if that person left their cat out in the rain? Like, I don't want to endorse their stuff. Like,
it's a horrible thing. I would not want to engage with anybody who would ever leave their cat anywhere alone. No. Never.
Not when it's raining, not when they can just
anytime.
I mean,
never.
Anywhere ever, like on the couch with a mouse in a house, on a louse, like for sure. But so those are the things I think about that I know makes me sound peculiar, but I do think about those things too. So I just wanted to put it out there.
No, I'm on the same page with you. I have I wouldn't say it's trust issues, but I have a hard time. It takes a long time for me to really trust someone. It really does.
That's why we're friends. And takes years.
Yeah. And even management. Yeah, go for it.
No, I want you to tell the story, but just remind me not to forget what I wanted to tell you. Go on.
Oh, damn. But when that happens, I always forget what I'm about to say.
I'm so sorry to interrupt you. You were going to talk about your management. Even your management, it took you a while to feel like you could trust them.
And I don't know if they're ever going to listen to this, but I still kind of don't. I still kind of don't. And it's kind of like that thing where it's transactional thing where it's yes, it's great that I'm opening myself up and I'm showing them my vulnerabilities, but at the end of the day, this is business and they're managing my business. And so I find it a little hard when, especially in these cases where it's separate from just pure friendships. It's got something transactional included, but also being an artist versus manager, it takes some vulnerability, it takes some opening up to do because that's what we do as manager and artist. So that area where a balance between transactional kind of business related stuff and kind of friendship, personal, human versus human kind of relationship is involved, I find it really difficult to find the balance. And I frankly still am trying to find that balance between my management. And yeah, that's just a little difficult for me. Whereas if it's a pure friendship, I just am so glad that I invited my friend Cynics over to this podcast a year ago now to just guest and talk about stuff because he's one of my best friend. He's just such a good friend. He turned out to be the best supporter. And that's where the whole endorsement comes in. It comes naturally. He always talks about how he loves my music. And I always talk about how I love his artwork. And it's just it comes naturally. It
feels
comes
good.
Naturally.
And it feels good. You're I would do
want
anything.
to.
You're yeah, you're like, hey, let me post this thing. Hey, let me
Yeah.
tell my people about the show you're doing. Hey, like, yes, totally. What I was gonna say is with the trust thing is, I was with my
Mm-hmm.
partner. I was with my partner for three. We've been together for 10 years. But year three, he turns
Mm-hmm.
to me and he's like, you know what? He's like, I think you're finally starting to trust me. And I was like, you know what? You're right. Like 3 years. Like we moved in the first
Yeah.
year together. Like it just, I think that that's extreme. That's extreme. Like I'm a little extreme. And also I think
No, I think
it's
it's complete. I think I'm probably gonna take longer, and I think it's
20
it's
years.
your pace. 20 years? Who knows?
It's your pace for sure. And I think that you're wise. I think that like there's that line, right? You don't want to be paranoid. You don't want to sabotage relationships because you can't trust.
Hmm.
And also, I think it's just wise, again, at the end of the day, no one is going to look after you like you.
Word.
And I hate to
It's
say that, it sounds
yeah.
cruel, but like at the end of the
It can be
day,
lonely. It's a lonely thing to realize, but it is the truth. And if you aren't aware of that, the longer you aren't aware of that, the more it means you're probably going to suffer from other people trying to, take advantage of you, and you really got to look out for yourself, right?
and probably similar to you, I am also at the same time because we're complex creatures. I'm
Mhm.
very naive. I am very trusting. I do want to see the best in everyone. I have been messed over because I've been so like, I've believed the things certain people have told me because
Yeah.
I wanted to. Because why would you lie? Or like, why would you make some promise that isn't truthful? So on the one hand, I'm like, okay, like, let's be careful. And on the other, I want the connection. I want the growth, the mutual growth. I want these very beautiful, meaningful relationships. I want to show up as my best self. I want to give. I want to pour my cup out to you as best as I can. So it's like the both and of me as well. And I think we all have our complexities there. And it's the snake eating its own tail. It's like this weird thing. It's like chicken or egg. It's like I'm giving all these metaphors which are ridiculous. Is the fact that I am guarded make me kind of like more susceptible to, certain things happening, or is the fact that I am so wanting to see the best, wanting to give. Like, is that also linked to my trust issues? This isn't therapy,
Mm.
but I should write this down and like pin it because there is like this tension between those things for me, at least. I don't know if that happens to you as well.
No, I feel you. And it's what I'm starting to realize nowadays a little more is that how nice would it be if this world was a place where when we live as just nicey person, we attract nicey person. But it seems that that's not how the world works. It seems that the way it works is that you need to have your own boundaries. And when you express that boundaries, you got to be that sassy girl sometimes. You got to be a little bit salty. And that's when people start to give you respect. And that's when you start to attract people who are on the same energy field, if you will,
Yep.
as you
And
are.
and
And
that's why, oh, go on,
yeah.
please, please, please. No, no, go.
No, and I find and I find that it's that act is very hard for me because I'm I don't want to say like I'm a nice person, but like I am. I can't be mean. I don't like to be salty,
I know
but
you are.
I
Yeah,
have to
you're
be.
nice.
I have to
Yeah.
be,
And that's the issue too, where it's like, oh wow, some people pushing you to that part. Um, and that what I was gonna say with the like, oh, what a great world this would be if you are this wonderful person, you're nice, you're kind, you're in integrity with your actions are the same as your
Mm.
what you communicate. That's a big one for me, right? Um, this is why the new age law of attraction is total BS, because you don't attract, it's not like attracts like. You don't attract what you are. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? Sometimes
Yeah.
you do. Sometimes you'll meet a friend, like your friend or all your other friends, and you're like, yeah, we're on the same page, baby. Like, let's do this fun thing. For sure. And also, like you said, it's just not like that. I often think that we attract people who we are their shadow, or we are
Mm.
what they wish they could be, but they can't, or
Mm.
they're not there yet in their development. So
Yeah.
they're attracted to us because there's part of them that has that kernel, but they can't quite get there. So then they maybe end up extracting from us, manipulating us, like, because they can't quite bring it up in themselves, but they're attracted, and then they project. And and so when they don't get what they want, this is like where energy vampires come in. When they don't get what they want and their energy is frustrated and they can't
Hmm.
have what we have, or they can't access this part of themselves that they have, because we all have the totality of every infinite possibility inside of ourselves, right? From the salty to the sweet to the innocent to the brilliant to the genius to the envious to the malicious to the chill to the peace. Like, it's all inside of us, right? Every single
Yes.
thing,
Yes.
everything. But they can't quite hone in on their own. So they think that they're misguided. They think, "Oh, if I can get this from that person, then I can have that experience of that energy," which is false. It never works. They roam the earth like alive zombie vampires, looking for it in everyone but themselves. And if they would just stay put and cultivate their own garden, they would find it. They may have to do some weeding. They might
Mm.
have to like cut a tree down and like do some unraveling of roots, but it's all there. And so that's often what I have a little theory. There's all the family stuff I won't get into, meaning a lot of times
Hmm.
we attract constellations of our families, like dynamics, because
Right.
our subconscious feels comfortable in that, so we're like, okay, we like to feel safe as humans, even if it's not feeling great. But
Mm.
anyway, that's often what I find. I don't think it's I think it's much more complicated. The world is not fair. The world is not balanced. How incredible would it be if, yeah, we're in integrity, we say what we mean, we act in the way that we feel, we're not, lying to ourselves and others, and then we could attract that same energy. How great would that be? But it often just isn't the case.
Yeah. No, I completely get you. And I think this is a little bit separate from like the whole like transactional manipulation, which is just completely just hands down like you need to not avoid that at all costs. You can't be taken advantage of financially or physically or in any way possible. And I know that society is at the moment structured in a way that women can't it's hard for women especially to say no to these things, to these opportunities where people try to take advantage of you. It's really hard to say no. And I frankly don't think that I can say no if there was the right kind of if things were structured in the right way to make it the most difficult for me to say no to when there's a chance for somebody else to take advantage of me. I really don't. I mean, I've never fortunately been like sexually assaulted or been greatly cheated on in terms of finance or business
Mm-hmm.
wise, but if there I think there's a reason why some people do get taken advantage of. It's because they probably didn't want to get taken advantage of, but it's just how things turned out. It's just the way society's structured things in a way to pressure you to not be able to say no, just straight up no. That in that sense, I think just I know it sounds a little naive, but nobody should ever get taken advantage of in that way, in a physical sense whatsoever. I think in a mental realm, on the other hand, I think it's just like you said, we all need to do our own garden work, our own field work, if you will. And it really hits home for me that we all have different characters inside of us. We have that sassy girl, we have that kind girl, we have that anger, we have that happiness, we have that joy. And I think it's so common sometimes that people expect a person to be this one character, like some sort of like an animation character where like we have this one personality trait and that's who we are. But really, in reality, we have different characters, different people inside of us that changes depending on the situation, the people that we interact with. And I think it's something that we really need to hone into.
I completely agree with you.
Yeah, and it's like I sometimes worry that like, oh, what if I come across as being like multi-personal, like disordered person or something? Like, what if I'm like, I'm like a little bit like, hey, and then another one, hey, I don't want this, Like, what if I come across as being like a weird, like crazy person? But like, then again, at the end of the day, this is my life. This is my character. This is my body. I can act however I want, whenever I want.
I think the whole thing about, sorry to keep bringing this up, but it just capitalism needs us to be flattened and branded like in this certain way. And so then we take that into our personal interactions where certain family members need us to be this avatar, right? Because in their mind, then they can treat us this way, or then like they're like, we create, it's family systems basically, right? It's the therapy. But and so friends do that too, right? We're like, oh, I can always count on Sue to make me laugh, or whatever. And then we pick up on that, and then we show up as that, right? We're like, well, even though I'm having a really bad day and I saw someone leaving their cat out in the rain and it made me sad, I have to show up to Johnny's house like happy and like this and that. So I think we are performing a lot for each other based on projections. And I think that when we can, a practice I really try to do with my friends and with my partner and I say that the minute, again, we've been together for so long, I have seen so many iterations of this person. The minute you start saying, and this is just an intimate partnership, I don't think friends really do that, but the minute you start saying, you always do that, or you're like this, it's over. Like when that happens, if we're like, oh, like that's our curse word in our relationship. Like the minute someone's like, you never put your socks away. We're like, did you hear that? Did you hear that? Because we have this theory. There's the elephant theory. So what they do to train elephants is they tie the elephant to a stake for a long time. Maybe even a year. You can Google it for those of you interested. And then they take the chain away, but the stake is still in the ground and the elephant stays there. And that is like what happens to our mind when I'm like, well, Sue's always the happy one. Sue has no problems. Sue's can't go through bad days. And you like, and I do that with, my whoever. Like that's not like, we all have these vast interior lives. You never know what someone's going through. You never know who someone is becoming. Like we're always becoming different versions of something, of our soul, of our spirit. And so I try really hard when I'm meeting someone, or even my coworker, my studio manager, I try really hard to remember that they're different from the last time I saw them.
Yes.
The next time I see you in a year or in 2027 or next lifetime, you're just going to, you're probably, we're different.
We're going to be different people. We're probably different people from since we started this conversation.
I am. Haven't you been a little changed? I've been a little changed.
I feel a little change. I feel it. Oh man, I really wanted to like talk this conversation so far is just so fascinating, and it's just really nice to be able to talk about energy, talk about relationship with others and what's actually going in our psyches, and just going inner, like our inner journey. And I think talking about this is so important. And I wanted to talk about so many other things like tarot cards, and I know like you're into witchcraft, and like I wanted to ask you so many things, and like I know we promised an hour. And I'd love to have you back. Or maybe I could just guest on your podcast if you're interested, if you think I'm interesting enough to come by. And I'd love to hear more about, witchcraft. And I'd love to hear about tarot reading and your profession.
It's so funny that we didn't even talk about that.
No.
If you have the space in 2022, I'd love to come back on here. And then I'd love to also have you on my podcast as well.
And Great. We have our own boundaries, so let's talk about our boundaries, and we can say no, yes, back and forth, no problem. We know that we are in mutual agreement with
respect. Yeah, it was such a pleasure to get to spend time with you.
No, this was such a fun talk. That hour just went by so quickly, honestly. Thank you, Sarah.
Thank you. Have a great day. Bye.
Have a great day. Bye.